Good afternoon and welcome to Two Colorados, a conversation about how we can get more students to and through college. I'm Erica Meltzer and I'm the Bureau Chief for Chalkbeat Colorado. Chalkbeat, if you're not familiar with us, we are a nonprofit journalism organization dedicated to covering education in America. When we started out, we focused almost exclusively on K-12, but over the years, we realized that students' educational journey doesn't start when they enter kindergarten and it doesn't end when they graduate from high school. And so we've expanded into early childhood, and in 2020, we added higher education coverage. Colorado is a well-educated state, but we import a lot of our college degree holders, and we don't do a great job sending our own high school graduates to college and opening those doors of opportunity for them. In the past 2 years, we've really focused our coverage on these issues of access and the challenges to completion, with a special focus on first-generation students, students of color, and rural students. These are all student groups that face more barriers than their peers and deserve support from our institutions. Without too much ado, I'm going to turn it over to our moderators. Jason Gonzales covers higher education and legislative matters for Chalkbeat. He's a Colorado native and a graduate of the University of Colorado Boulder. Nicole Cappalino is a first-generation Colombian student studying criminal justice, minoring in human development and family relations with a concentration on victims and victim services. She'll be graduating from the University of Colorado, Denver in December 2022, and she joins us from Young Invincibles, who we're really proud to partner with on this event. And I also wanted to extend a big thank you to Open Campus Media. They cover the intersection of higher education and American life, and they've been invaluable partners to us in developing our coverage. And with that, I'm going to let Jason and Nick take it away.
Hello, everyone. Again, Jason Gonzales. I'm excited to introduce this panel, and thank you so much to everyone for showing up today. So first, let me introduce Nathan Cadena. Nathan is Denver Scholarship's Chief Operating Officer. As a native Coloradan, Nathan has worked in education for over 15 years within community colleges, universities, and nonprofit organizations. We have Cecilia Orphan. Cecilia is an associate professor of higher education at the University of Denver and director of partnerships for the Alliance for Research on Regional Colleges. Her research agenda and teaching are inspired by her experiences as a first-generation college student attending a rural serving community college and regional public university. And Luis Borrego. Luis recently graduated from the Colorado School of Mines with a bachelor's in chemistry, and he will be continuing his studies in pursuit of a PhD at Oregon State University.
Hi y'all, I'm Nicole. I'm also very excited to be here with y'all today. Today I'm going to be introducing Malcolm Lovejoy, who is a senior at Campo High School in the far southeast corner of Colorado, and he is preparing to attend Rice University this fall after graduation. And next, I'd like to introduce Will Simpkins. Will is the Vice President for the Student Affairs at Metropolitan State University of Denver, and he leads student engagement and wellness initiatives, enrollment management services, and classroom to career initiatives as well. I think that we are going to go on to our question list, Jason, if that is correct.
Yep, go ahead.
Awesome. So I will go ahead and start us off with a question for Will Simpkins. So understanding that first-generation students go through a significant amount of additional barriers is vital to student success. With that in mind, what can administrators and professors specifically do to support their students' individual needs equitably?
Thanks, Nick. That's a great question. You know, this is something we care deeply about at MSU Denver, where almost 57% of our undergraduate students are first gen, some first in their families. I think a lot of the work at scale really is about communication and language, how we talk about higher education, how we connect with students. You know, the transformative impact of college, as you know, you're a student, Nick, is the relationships that you build with your faculty members, with your peers, with your advisors, and ensuring that each one of those people in your experience understands the perspective and the experience of a first-gen student so that they can make sure that you're getting the resources, support that you need to be successful, is how we can do that. But it requires a lot of work to turn the culture. We're working against 400 years of higher education history in this country to turn that ship around.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think a lot of people don't know, just based off of where they're from or the people around them. They just don't know the experience of certain students, and that's definitely beneficial for all staff and faculty to just understand the different perspectives of students that come from different backgrounds and just their struggles and how it could be different for them. Even though it's something might be easy for someone, it might be completely different and more difficult for another kind of student. So thank you for that. All righty, Cecilia, this question is for you. So before we dig into the challenges and opportunities facing Hispanic male and rural students, Cecilia, tell us, why does this matter? Why can college and not just a high school degree be beneficial for underserved students, and what's at stake for these students?
Well, I want to first start off by thanking you all for inviting me to join the panel. This is an incredibly important conversation. I'm a huge fan of Chalkbeat Colorado and Jason Gonzales in particular. The question of why this is important gets couched in the economic imperative. These are the demographics that are growing. Our economy needs them to be college educated and get jobs. But I hesitate to frame it in that way because for me, it is a moral and societal imperative to rectify the systems of oppression and inequality that make it to where we see many Latinx, Latino male students and rural students going to college, but not finishing the school. And that puts the onus, just as Will was just sharing, on institutions, on policymakers, on all of us to create the conditions in which they can succeed. And their success is important to their families, to their communities, and yes, to the economy. But I think we always need to center back on the moral and societal imperative that addressing these barriers and making sure rural students and Latino male students go to college and succeed. It's a moral imperative.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Thank you for that. I'm going to pass it on to Jason now.
Thank you so much for Cecilia, and always a pleasure to get to talk with you. Next question is for Nate Luis. So Nate Luis, let's dig into Hispanic male outcomes. As our reporting highlighted, they enter college at the lowest rate in the state, and they're the second lowest next to Black men in graduating. What is contributing to this disparity in college going and graduation rates in the state, as you guys see it and as you guys have experienced?
So actually, recently, before this semester ended, I had done a quick research project for one of my classes involving these sort of challenges for the Latinx community and why it seems that they're somewhat prevented, or something is preventing them from successfully getting to college, and not only that, but successfully getting through it. And one of those barriers I found to be one of the main culprits is discrimination. And not just during the college experience, but before, because I feel that the discrimination before can also prevent a high school student from believing or thinking that college is a choice. At that point, we know my family experienced their own fair share of discrimination while I was growing up. And growing up with that discrimination made me feel that, you know, there are certain aspects in life that seem to be just for the privilege of a few people, a group of other people that aren't me. And, you know, when that mindset gets ingrained in your mind, it sort of puts a pseudo barrier, a limit that shouldn't be there, because that's just not the case. And I think discrimination before, that's how it prevents a high school student. It makes them believe that college isn't a choice. And during the college experience, I would say that discrimination would make the campus environment feel hostile. And if it's hostile, then the college student, the minority student, may not feel the motivation to keep going, because what would be the reason be if the entire campus itself is invalidating their own identity? And I feel that discrimination has been one of the main reasons. I would say the Latinx community has struggled with being successful in college, since if the sort of emotional drawbacks that it can bring will prevent them from being academically successful. And I truly believe that this is a factor that needs to be addressed if we want to help our minority students be successful in higher education.
Hey.
Yeah, I definitely echo much of what Luis says. And Luis, congratulations on completing your bachelor's degree in engineering. But the system that Luis is talking about is absolutely true. The biases and barriers that are ingrained into the P16 system that we've created and maintained in this country, is outdated, but it's really built toward an industrial labor force. But then ultimately, the post-secondary pathway has really been catered to families of legacy, families of wealth, families of accessibility. So it's super important to think about how navigating, the secondary system to actually cross over into post-secondary really is counterintuitive to a lot of cultural expectations, familial responsibilities, and then ultimately workforce expectations. When we look at Colorado in general, it's a booming economy. Denver specifically, especially when we look at Latino males, the workforce system really expects them to fulfill lots of artisan or skilled labor jobs. But when we think about the opportunities that first generation students want, not just them, but their families, they want the same American dream that anybody else has. And based on the system that's created and that we're trying to navigate, that's the traditional higher ed system. So it really is cultural expectations, cultural navigations that present both the barriers, but then also the keys to be able to identify, figure out the puzzle and navigate. So I think the panel here represents, gateways in many systems.
Before we move on, Nick, I see you shaking your head, and I hate to put you on the spot as also a moderator, but I want to know your experience of what you've seen before I move on to the next question really quickly. Just, and what they're saying. Can you echo some of that as a Latina?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, going off of what Nathan said a little bit, like there are different, for example, for me in particular, like familial issues that were kind of very present in my life that I feel like, I don't know, maybe not all types of students might deal with, and maybe not that perspective might not always be considered from staff and administration when it comes to completing and pursuing our college careers. But yeah, I was just nodding because everything just sounded so like it just really hit home to like kind of my experience as well. So thank you a lot for that, Nathan. I appreciate your honesty and your story.
Thank you so much, three of you. So next question is for Cecilia and Malcolm. So in terms of rural, what are the barriers to rural students getting to college? And what have you guys seen?
So there are a variety of factors. Some of it has to do with the fact that rural students are more likely to be first in their families to go to college. And we know that one of the best predictors of college attainment is your mother's educational level. So that's one first issue. Second is rural K-12 schools, and this is something Chalkbeat does a great job of covering, often face a lot of resource disparities. So they have fewer college preparatory courses, fewer guidance counselors that are equipped to help students think about college. And so that poses challenges. And then there's cost. And so we have cut funding to higher education so significantly that tuition has become very expensive. And for most rural students and first generation students, they would qualify for things like Colorado Opportunity Grant and Pell Grant, but a lot of students don't know that those even exist. And so they don't know that if they see a price for a tuition of a local college or university, they may not have to pay that full tuition. And so there's this sense of sticker shock that can push people away. I also think it's really important to think about proximity. So we know that most people in the United States will attend a college that is within 50 to 30 miles from their home. And so that's why it's really important that we have a network of well-resourced colleges and universities, what we call it in the Alliance for Research on Regional Colleges, rural serving institutions that are really designed to enroll and to serve and to educate and to support rural students. And part of that means adopting culturally responsive programming for those students. And I think it's also important to note that rural, sometimes we think when we see the word rural, we code that in our minds as being white and white people. But we know throughout the US and particularly in Colorado, rural communities are incredibly diverse. So if we think about like the San Luis Valley, for example, it's an incredibly diverse community. And so being culturally responsive means understanding and recognizing those intersecting identities that students hold. And a common theme for research tells us for students of color and for rural students is the importance of family engagement. Family needs to be a part of everything that these students do for most students. And that means everything from choosing courses to being involved in different aspects of the traditions on campus. And I think a lot of colleges kind of have this stance that, oh, you come to college and you separate those ties and you become your own independent person, but that doesn't work for many students of color, many Latino students and many rural students. So when we can address that factor, and I know we'll talk about things that can be changed, involving family is really important. And then the last thing I'll mention is just access to broadband internet is a big deal. And so when we shifted to remote learning in the K-12 space and in higher education, that worked well and fine for people in Denver, for many people in Denver, but not everyone, because there's broadband access issues in urban spaces too, but particularly in rural spaces. So you have students that are going to the parking lot of their college to do their homework, or to the Walmart or the McDonald's to get their work done. When we think about, are those the ideal conditions for success for them to complete their work and engage in learning? Probably not. And so that creates an imperative to expand broadband access in rural communities.
Welcome you. I know you've been vocal about some of the challenges, and we've talked a lot about some of the challenges some of your peers face. So tell us what you've seen.
You know, I'd like, I guess, to preface this by saying that, you know, I think there's a lot of commonalities between the challenges that rural students face and the challenges that, you know, other minority groups face, whether that be students of color or, you know, in poverty. But I think that fundamentally, there's one big difference in the biggest challenge. And having lived in a very rural areas my entire life, you know, I'm getting ready to graduate from high school on Sunday, and I have the whole senior class has 4 students. So, you know, it's obviously just such a different environment. I mean, you know, me and my peers, it's like, you know, when you go to the city, it's just such a different place, and it's quite shocking, actually. And I really think that that's the biggest thing. It's such a change in environment from, you know, having that tight-knit community where, you know, you have a lot more, I guess, like-minded people. My community, and this doesn't reflect every rural community, of course, but my community is it's, you know, very much mostly white. You know, 80% of the population is below the poverty line. It's, you know, you have a lot of, I think, like-minded thought, and areas like, you know, urban environments and going off to college is not, it's, you know, it's regularly like looked down upon. as a very foolish thing to do. And I just, it is so deep rooted in just, the thoughts of the people that, it's a really difficult thing to change. But as we're, moving into a more modern time, you can't have isolated groups anymore. I think there has to be a lot more, connection between urban and rural. But, I mean, on top of those challenges, we also have, as Cecilia was saying, we have a lot of issues just with resources. My school doesn't have any counselors. We've never had any counselors. So, trying to get through applying to colleges and scholarships and everything for myself was very difficult. Luckily we had some different teachers and stuff that were willing to, really help out with that, those kind of things, because from even knowing what scholarships to apply for, understanding financial aid, none of that is, and no one knows any of that. So it's very challenging.
Congratulations on your upcoming graduation here. And Nick has your next question.
Hey, Malcolm, I really appreciate your story and your insight. It's super important. So thank you again for that. But I did want to ask you, let us know about some challenges that you faced getting into college as a rural student. What barriers did you face? How much support you had from community and colleges? And what worked for you for getting into college?
I've been extremely lucky in this endeavor. Very lucky that my mom, of course, she went to college. She earned her MFA in the arts. So she was always in school, and then she was the head of the art department in the University of New Mexico. So, ever since I was little, I really had that like foundation of, I never really questioned if I was going to college. It was just always like I was going to, so I was really lucky in that, because truth be told, a lot of my peers that they never got that. Their parents never went to college, and it's just not something that's, I guess, expected of them. But it's not within the community. Going outside of, we do have students that go and attend school, but it's always the local community colleges and trade schools. I think that if you were to look at the graduates of Campo, or I guess from my entire county, and the schools that they choose, I cannot think of any students from Campo that have gone to any school with a undergraduate population of above 5,000. And that would be within the last 5-6 years. Can't name a single one. So it's just, I think a lot of it is just that fundamental fear. And of course I have that. I was privileged to get a full ride scholarship into Rice University this year. And, but that's just such a shift in environment that it is a little bit stressful.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not from a rural community, so I don't know much about how that student experience is. So it's really interesting for me to learn firsthand just how really truly different that is. And I can't imagine how shocking it would be to go from a school where my graduating class is for students to a Rice University. Like you're gonna have the time of your life. I'm so excited for you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, congratulations, really. So I'm going to move on to our next question is for Luis. Luis, what have you seen in your community in terms of challenges to getting Hispanic men to college? And tell us what's worked for you and fellow Hispanic men in getting to college.
I think one of the biggest challenges for me is that sort of feeling that that imposter syndrome, that you don't really belong in, this sort of environment. And I think one of the aspects I would have enjoyed having a lot more in high school and maybe throughout some of my college experiences, having a sort of a person there that was like me, that was successful, that I can look up to and say like, wow, I can eventually be at that point. But I didn't really have that as I was going through high school. And I feel that that's a sort of truth for a lot of Hispanic males and females, that there aren't a lot of us that I can see in the STEM field being successful. And that can get somewhat demotivating when, me going to Colorado School of Mines, where the population is predominantly Caucasian, and, me first stepping on that campus and seeing that there was really nobody like me was somewhat intimidating. But I feel that what helped me get through this fear, this limit that I had unknowingly placed for myself, is that, well, there's really nothing stopping me from being that person that I wanted to be, that I wanted to see. And I feel that that's what has driven me to keep going and pursue a higher education in STEM. Because if I don't like the fact that I don't see that many people like us, then I should be that person. We have to start somewhere. And because I know that in the future, there's going to be other students like me, like other minority students, asking the same question I had when I was graduating high school. And is college a choice for them? And if they see people like me, other minority students succeeding in higher education or in other aspects of life, I feel that that will in turn help solve a lot of the problems we have been seeing with getting the minority population into a higher education path.
Luis, thank you so much. And I definitely can relate to a lot of what you're saying. Next question is for Nathan and Cecilia. So I want to talk about the opportunities here and what can be done to, help students get through. So speaking from your guys' lens of what you guys do and have researched, Nathan, tell me about what you found helps Hispanic males, and Cecilia, tell me what you found that can help rural students.
Sure. Fortunately, I have a team that works with thousands of high school students each year, so we get to hear voices from students themselves. The other thing that has come up in the conversation today is parents and family. When we surveyed a handful of near graduates from Denver Public Schools, they talked about systemic things that they experience and things that they would have liked to see differently. And so systemically, there's many opportunities, but not othering different groups of students is one of the important pieces. A lot of the messages that start early on, even in elementary education, is a general message. A general message about who goes to college. And Luis talked about who he sees in different fields. It doesn't necessarily look like all the different subgroups that are being served. So there's a sense and a feeling and a culture of being other than the message, other than the general idea and movement that is headed towards college and towards college completion thereafter. So individualistic messaging and honoring diverse pathways in a very individual way is super important. From a messaging sense, not just verbally, but visually. Visual assets within schools are important for not only representation, but also that it honors not necessarily the traditional academic pathway. MSU Denver represents, an open access four-year institution, which is super unique. And being able to see those sorts of things allow folks that have been othered throughout the system kind of openings of daylight to be able to see, I can see myself there. again, the other thing that we saw is parental engagement is always really strong at the elementary level, and then kind of, adds familial responsibilities, not only for students, but for family members, especially trying to thrive in an economy that is really outpacing a sensible rate of inflation. Families are being pulled in different ways to where being involved in college disposition and college decisions, especially for first generation families, it's not being realistic as far as their capacity to do so. So really holding and creating some scaffolding for families to remain involved, to be able, especially in first generation families where folks like us act as kind of a proxy family member to give confidence in decisions and boost self-efficacy in a way that we hope students, think about that. But there's lots of ways to help at least navigate the system that students and families are navigating.
I will share very similar things to what Nathan shared. One is family is so important. So that family engagement piece and opportunities for family to shape and have influence in their students' trajectory is really important, because I think for some rural families, there's a fear that if your child goes to college outside of the community, they're not going to come back. And so that kind of points to another piece around the community involvement as well. And so in some rural communities, you'll see the local newspaper sharing how many students got into college and which schools they're going to, or you'll see small businesses create scholarships, even if it's a small dollar amount for those students to go to college. It signals a community-wide support for the students to go to school. And then so much of the onus is on colleges. And so there's a sense that rural communities can be out of sight, out of mind. And we see this a lot in Colorado. There's so much focus on the Front Range, and we forget that the state is huge. Most of it, geographically speaking, is rural. And so we need to consider and be keeping these communities front of mind when we think about challenges around public health, which rural communities often have lower public health outcomes, economic outcomes as industries change. And other aspects of community well-being must be emphasized and improved. And this is particularly important when we think about the kind of jobs that rural students can get if they want to return home. We need to be making sure that, in particular, rural serving institutions, rural serving colleges and universities are aligning the degrees that they offer with the needs of the local community. And so we see that in many rural serving institutions. We'll see degrees in like natural resource management or nursing degrees that have an emphasis on serving rural communities and addressing the nursing shortages that many rural communities face. So it's such a multi-tiered approach, but I think a lot of this just goes back to centering rural communities instead of kind of having them be an afterthought in many of our conversations. In policy and education, they're often kind of the tail end of a conversation. We need to do more to center their needs. And then again, kind of pulling on my earlier point, that we can't assume that just because a student is rural, it means that they're necessarily white. And there are communities like Campo, as Malcolm was sharing, that are predominantly white, and that's definitely true. But there are a number of communities where there's a growing Latino population. And so when we think about kind of their intersecting experiences and some of the dynamics that they face that Luis spoke to when they get to campus and the discrimination they face, it's really important to account for that. And so I think it's just like this complex, multi-phased approach, and recognizing that rural students are different, and their difference is wonderful and important and can enrich a campus environment, and needs to be accounted for in how campuses serve their students.
May I just comment on the back end of this to kind of synthesize rural students and let's say urban students of color? Poverty doesn't see race. And we know for the last 60 years in the chat, TRIO has come up, federally funded TRIO programs to serve first gen low income and students with disabilities at different levels. I think that's something that we could absolutely look at as best practices. The thing about TRIO is it's limited. It's limited in numbers and scope. and where what we try and do, so DSF is basically a scaled out version of TRIO. Let's say a model that serves 100 in TRIO, we serve 7,500 a year, you know, with similar best practice lessons. The good thing about TRIO is they serve rural communities as well, Indian country, lots of different spaces around this country that show need. So it's really, really important for us to look at best practices that have been proven for 60 years, look at systemic opportunities to actually fund. And Colorado needs to figure out how to fund these sorts of models to scale out, because we know what works. And we have models to where if we have funding in the right spaces, we could really, really close some of these gaps. But definitely just want to be sympathetic to the different communities and the differences. There are models out there that could pivot and serve larger groups in a really, really important, impactful way.
Thank you both for that.
Yeah, thank you both for that. I'm going to pass on this next question to Will. So as an open access institution, how does MSU Denver try to meet the needs of different types of students that come to campus? Tell us about the range of students you serve, from rural to urban to students who are even experiencing homelessness, and what has worked in promoting better outcomes for these students.
Yeah, that's a big question, Nick. I'm going to try to hone in and be concise. You know, I think a lot of Coloradans, because access and many regional institutions are not front and center of our sort of narrative about higher education in this country, a lot of Coloradans don't know that MSU Denver is the third largest university in the state. We serve more Coloradans than any other institution in the state, more Coloradans of color than any other institution in the state, more first-gen Colorado students than any other institution in the state at the four-year level. I got to give props to my community college colleagues out there. And so we have this, you know, wildly diverse student population in downtown Denver. We serve almost every zip code or congressional district, I guess, in the state. We have students coming, you know, from near and far to the campus to take classes, but we also have a lot of online students from rural parts of Colorado. From an academic perspective, one of the programs that I've long been a fan of here is our Masters of Social Work program. It was one of the first totally online MSW programs in the country. And we know Colorado has a social worker shortage all across the state. And that's one way that MSU Denver is having an impact more broadly in Colorado by getting, like Cecilia said, the programs that local communities need to support their economy or just the community itself, getting that educational experience out there to them. I think the two biggest ways that we try to support our students are, first, affordability, and then second, resources and support. So on the affordability scale, we are really proud that we're among the most affordable institutions in Colorado. We fully fund tuition and fees for 30% of our students. That's over 5,000 undergraduate Roadrunners paying $0 in tuition and fees. This year, we're actually expanding that program. We're calling it the Roadrunner Promise. Any new student, first-time student, who has an adjusted gross income on their tax returns, family tax returns of $60,000 or less, we will get to $0 for their tuition and fees. We've also just announced full coverage of tuition and fees for Indigenous and Native students who are Colorado residents and who are enrolled in one of the 574 sovereign nations in this country. And we're excited about a new state law that mandates that students who've come through the foster system will have $0 tuition and fees. This is incredible, right? This is how I think an institution and a state can come together and really talk about affordability. But I want to underline what Nate said a minute ago. This state does not fund higher education, period. We are 48th in the country in terms of state rankings in funding per pupil. And I like to say that I don't think my students deserve more resources than students at other institutions in the state. I'd like them to have the same resources as other institutions in the state. We have one of the lowest MSU Denver actually has the lowest per student funding of four-year institutions in the state of Colorado. In the last 2 years, the legislature has made historic investments in first-gen students and students of color through the funding formula, which has positively impacted MSU Denver. And we're excited about that. But more has to be done, because at MSU Denver, we have one staff member to every 25 students. At other institutions, it's 1 to 6, 1 to 7, 1 to 8. And what we know is where we have programs, we call them wraparound supports, where we have these programs like TRIO, and I've seen TRIO come up in the chat a couple times, or our brother-to-brother program supporting men of color. Any of these programs where we can provide that staff assistance, our retention rates go up by 15, 20%. And to me, that's a clear case for equitable funding in this state. If we want to get more rural students, more first-gen students, more students of color across the finish line, we have to start driving our resources to the goals that we have. And right now, as a state, we're just not. There's a whole other panel on higher ed funding, I think, probably. But one last thing that I just want to say. We're really proud at MSU Denver that a significant portion of our faculty and staff were first-gen college students. We actually have t-shirts that they wear occasionally that say, "I'm first-gen too." And I think it sends messages to our students that many of us who work here shared their college experiences. I think, and you can tell me, I think it makes it a little easier to ask the question or approach for assistance or just seek a mentor when you know that there's something, you share something in common in your background.
Yeah, MSU sounds like it's doing a really good job. I saw the thing about the free education for Native American students, and now I did not about the foster youth, which is incredible. I can't believe that. That's so great. But yeah, definitely more needs to be done, but just we're on the right path, which is incredible. And the t-shirt thing I really like, just because me as a first generation student, I know that would have made me feel way more comfortable in the classroom, and just seeing not all these successful people have come from a successful origin, or like, if I don't know if that makes any sense, but just working from the ground up is really cool to see as a first generation student, that your professors are relatable to you, which is really cool. So thank you for that.
We are actually people too.
Yeah, that's really cool to see. So I'm going to move on to our last question before we get to audience questions. And this one's for anyone who wants to answer or anyone who wants to join the conversation. Knowing that students face these challenges, what can be done to encourage communities on campus where students from different groups where students from different groups can feel welcome? I know based off my own experience a little bit, when I moved from Florida 3 years ago to go to school in Colorado, and I have no family, I had no friends here, I was on my own. And I didn't understand my story really either, and like why I was struggling with certain things. I didn't understand that I was struggling with this because I'm a first generation student, or because my family comes from different backgrounds and we had different struggles than I guess the average students would have. So something that I think would have been really cool, and particularly my freshman year when I was just very, very lost, would have been like kind of like almost like a mandatory freshman orientation class for first generation students. I know we have that just for freshmen in general, but I think one more specifically oriented to first generation students would be cool, because even though you might know you're a first generation student, might not know what that really means, or like the story behind that, or like just kind of like, I know I've been privileged enough to be trained in equity trainings and different trainings through my job with Young Invincibles, New Era Colorado, and other amazing nonprofits. But if it weren't for them, I don't think I'd really understand my story and like the real meaning behind what it means to be a first generation student, and that there are others like me facing similar barriers, and that you can actually do things about them.
Yeah, I think the answer, I mean, I've been thinking about this, and I think just like Nicole was saying, I think more, programs, I think, at these universities that, particularly for rural, I think it would be nice if you could see more of a where the university integrates, I guess, families and parents and communities more. Maybe this starts in high school to where there's more, like, for instance, I don't really it's almost like you hear about these like schools and stuff, but I never really get to see them. Occasionally we get to have like a Zoom call with a recruiter, but we don't really get to meet anyone. We don't really get to go anywhere. No one really goes on college tours. So it's like, and then, obviously, when you leave home, it's like you just leave your family behind, your community behind. And those are the biggest fears. So I really think more programs to where you could help, have a community, or relationship between the community, the parents, the kids, especially in the first few years.
We see you got a lot of head nods over there. So we'll finish with you, if you don't mind, and then we'll move on to audience questions.
With me?
Yeah. Or do you have anything?
Yeah.
You are big head nods over there. So just see if you want
to add to the sort of solutions we can do. One of those solutions is what we're doing right now in this webinar, sharing these stories. And I think that is very important for minority students to have access to stories like Nicole's, Malcolm's, mine. And when people like us are showing them that they too can reach the same heights as we can. Even now, after I graduated, I've reached the summit that I at first thought that would be impossible for somebody like me to reach. And, after graduation, seeing that a lot of my other friends are already going higher than that, a past self would have probably been demotivated, but now I just can't really get enough of it, because I just know that that's the next stop for me. And being able to share this story of mine, this journey of struggle, of unsureness of myself, and then all of a sudden telling them how I managed to get myself up from that, I feel that's very important. That's a very important tool for these students that might be going through the same thing I did, to hear, because I feel that it would make me really happy to know that I managed to give them that motivation, that initial spark that they need to get their first steps towards climbing that mountain that may seem unclimbable at first.
Thank you so much. And thank you for letting me put you on the spot there. And Will, sounds like I am on the hook for a panel on higher education funding. So thank you all so much for answering our questions. And now we'll move on to the audience questions. And thank you all for those of you who submitted. The first question is for Will and Nate, and this is from Andrew. Many students of color and first-gen students rely heavily on their at-home family and extended family for support. How are the universities working directly with the family unit and parents to make a more holistic approach to supporting their students?
I'll speak generally, Will, and then let you bring it home with the MSU. I need one of those first generation shirts too, FYI. So medium, just joking. Anyway, the really important piece about, what was the question, Jason? Sorry, man. Joking around too much.
It's so many first gen and students of color rely heavily on their at-home family and extended family support. How are universities working directly with the family unit and parents to make a more holistic approach to supporting their students? And Cecilia, you might want to jump into if that, because I know this is something that you care about as well.
I think adding some intentional bridging program for parents that are not necessarily comfortable within the university and post-secondary environment is key. There are parental engagement pieces that happen at the post-secondary level. There are some universities that have taken their parent programming. CSU is one of our partners that has been very intentional about adding their parental programming to include ongoing parent supports while specifically first generation or non-traditional students are in school. But it's important to kind of bridge that cultural divide that's there. When I went to school, my parents were not comfortable coming to the parent day. They didn't look like any of the other parents. They didn't have any of the other experiences. So it's important to kind of acknowledge that, but still create the space for welcoming.
Yeah, Nate. I am not a first gen student, but my mom was a first gen student. She went to college to become a teacher, but she was a commuter student. She had no idea what my college experience was like. And I have an older sister, and I remember her saying that she didn't come to things because she thought we didn't want her there. And so it's important, I think, to mediate those conversations and help students and their families have conversations about that. I think it's really critical that institutions have to intentionally invite families, and I'll say students, communities in specifically. You have to put out the invitation. You have to say, we want you here. And in fact, we need you here because you're part of this support system. Another thing that I think is really critical, we're a Hispanic serving institution with a very large population of Dreamer students. Translating all of our resources is absolutely vital, and we've just started that process. The last thing that I would say is we have to honor our students' families, and like, we just ended graduation season. They're graduating too. And so at our Latinx graduation, the student gets to walk across the stage with their family, and the family actually puts the stole on them as a symbol of, we did this together. And my favorite part of any of our events at MSU Denver is when a student brings their child to the event and the child's like, that's my mom. And, the mom's like, shush, shush, shush. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. Yell it as loud as you want, because you are awesome. And it takes a lot of perseverance to do that. And I just want everybody cheering as loud as they can for every student.
That's incredible. I almost cried a little, but I don't want to mess up my makeup because I have to work later. But the graduation part's really sweet. I know my family, my mom would love that, and like I would lose it. I'm like losing it right now a little. But our next question. Oops, I'm sorry, I got a little discombobulated. Here we go. Okay, our next question is from Shannon, and it is for anyone to answer. From your experience, how beneficial have concurrent enrollment, which is dual enrollment programs, been for students that you have worked with?
I can quickly just speak to the research on it, and then those who've actually had direct experience with students can chime in. But the research shows that it's incredibly effective. Having concurrent enrollment programs gets students a deep understanding that they can do college level work. The problem is that the students who are most likely to participate in concurrent enrollment programs, and this is true in Colorado as well, tend to be privileged. And so the question becomes, and the imperative becomes, how do we make sure those programs are accessible to all students?
Yeah, I'd really love to jump on this because I've taken the dual enrollment classes all throughout high school. And, I will say that I think that, the dual enrollment classes with different community colleges has been probably the single most helpful thing in rural areas of the state to get to introduce students to, like, I think the college atmosphere. I mean, obviously, it's not the same as for college work, but it's really great to be in that kind of environment. And for my school, we have to do them all online, but a lot of them are like on Zoom and stuff, so it's great because we can connect with other rural students all over the place, and they're wonderful. So
We, at MSU Denver, we have found that students who are in our concurrent enrollment programs who have visited the campus are more likely to matriculate to the university. And so, we've for a while invested in actually supporting schools, I think from Aurora and Denver, in bringing their juniors and seniors to the campus to sort of see what it's like here. So I actually think getting our high school students, and for that matter, adults who have been out of high school for a while but might be thinking about a degree, get folks to the campus so they actually see that it's not a totally scary place, can make a big difference. But specifically with concurrent enrollment, we've got to provide the link. It's not enough just to offer it. We have to really translate the pathway and make clear how you go from concurrent or dual enrollment into a bachelor's degree program and or associate's degree program.
I'd just like to add to Will's comment. I think the culture is important of how it's implemented in the schools. The students should know that it is a college class. They should know that it's paid for, and they actually should know there are consequences when they become an undergraduate student. If they don't finish those classes, it counts against their satisfactory academic progress. So it's implemented in lots of different ways in different locations, but I do think it's a great opportunity when it works and when it actually lands the student in the right trajectory as well.
Can I throw one more suggestion in? This is just like a free tip to state policymakers. I actually think we should start shifting the cost burden of concurrent enrollment away from the school districts. I think there's a lot of districts that don't have the resources to offer a full sort of array of concurrent offerings. And so I'm seeing nodding from Malcolm and Luis and Nick. I imagine that the offerings can be limiting sometimes. And I think there's an opportunity in Colorado for we institutions to pool our resources and offer a much more interesting array of concurrent enrollment courses to high schools all across the state.
So growing up in Florida, I did not have access to any programs like these, like concurrent enrollment, dual enrollment programs. And then I found out like, oh, like I did half my bachelor's in college, and I was like, how? Like, what? That sounds so cool. And like people are graduating at like 20 years old with like full-on careers ahead of them. And I just think it's such an incredible opportunity that I'm sure a lot of different places don't have, but I think every school should be offering these programs, especially because it's a lack of equity as well. Like certain communities are offering these versus others. And it's like those students from those communities are gonna grow up and be more educated in the long run because they had access to these things, and the communities that don't are just going through the regular process. Some of them aren't even attending college. So I think that's really important. And I also wanted to touch a little bit on, we mentioned like access to resources or like pushing, I guess, like the marketing perspective of resources. Like sometimes there are programs and resources available, but you don't know about them unless you're like looking for them. And that kind of goes back to my other standpoint of like, if you don't really know why you're struggling or what your story is, you might not be looking for those specific resources, if that makes sense. Like I would not have been looking for first generation resources when I was a freshman, even though that's what I needed, I just didn't know. So pushing that to students like might like kind of give them that realization, oh, I might actually be able to use this by like, I don't know, like a silly example, just putting flyers everywhere, like just pushing it out to students more so that they don't have to just do the research on their own, because that's a struggle in itself.
Unfortunately, our time is at an end, and I could listen to you all speak for probably another hour, maybe two, maybe longer. And Will, I actually got a little teary there as well, just thinking about how proud my parents were to watch me graduate, and just thinking back at that. So thank you for evoking that in myself. And Nicole, thank you for being such a great co-moderator on this. You were amazing. And before we wrap here, just a couple parting things for all of you audience members. So as you exit this event, you'll see a survey pop in your web browser. Please take a couple moments to fill this out and help us better our events. We'll be following up with an email that will include a recording of the event, recap, and links to our resource guide. And again, I cannot thank all of you enough. You were amazing, and the insights that you were able to provide were just absolutely phenomenal. So everybody out there, thank you so much for attending, and have a great Wednesday evening.